What's up, guys? DRJ here, and today I want to talk to you guys about some of the madness that's going on surrounding the marketing PR issues, some big game launch titles. Namely, what I want to focus on today is Battlefield 3 and, to a lesser extent, Skyrim. Before I hop into that, just want to do a recap. Competitive FPS player. I've played FPS games since the beginning of time. I've been around, since they came into development. I've seen how they've evolved over time. I have a huge amount of time with the Battlefield series. Started off Battlefield 1942, played that competitively, very successful, played on a variety of different top teams, made my own team, which was another top team, merged that team into Battlefield Vietnam, and our team in Battlefield Vietnam went on to be the top team in the United States, undefeated 2 seasons, arguably the world. We did have a world tournament. Technically we lost to the Germans, but the team that won was actually a US team that we stomped on all the time, so it was kind of strange. But anyway, as far as like experience goes with FPS titles, and especially Battlefield titles, I think you'd be hard pressed to find somebody that has, more experience within these games and breaking them down to a fucking science the way that I have in the past. The only other person would come anywhere close would probably be XCal. With that in mind, let's go. So basically what's going on is we're seeing the beta that came out for Battlefield 3, which in my opinion was absolutely embarrassing, and part of me doesn't understand it, but I talk about it on my website or in videos or comments or whatever, and I get I'm still getting, just yesterday, this is what prompted me actually to want to do this. I'm still getting messages, emails, comments, all sorts of things telling me, hey, WaldoDude, don't you understand that this game was an earlier build and the game that's coming out is not going to be reflective of the experience you had in the beta. So, I want to cry every time I hear this, because to me that just seems insane. First of all, let's just start with the basics. If you're buying a game that you're hoping is not going to be reflective of the experience that you had in the beta, what exactly are you buying that game on? I'll touch on this more a little bit later, but I think what companies are starting to figure out is that because, actually as a result of the COD franchise expanding the gaming populace to all these casual individuals and making a purpose and a dedicated move to actually move away from the areas in gaming that were dominated by players that did have more skill and move to a different area where it's possible for a casual to compete on a very similar level as anyone else who's may or may not be very good at that game. Like that was a I'm trying to think how to put this, premeditated move. That was an intentional move to, like I said, I've talked about this before, lower the skill ceilings to make it more approachable and essentially casual friendly, so that anybody can compete at any given time, and on any given day, on any given match around, somebody can be the #1 gamer. The downside of that, of course, is that, as we talked about before, there is no consistency. It's very frustrating that people like myself want to go out there and prove that they're the best, because while you may be able to show that you're better more often than not than somebody else, at the same time there's still such an absolute lack of consistency as compared to, say, older games, that it's very, very, very frustrating to play a game like that. I've mentioned before, I think the common example I've used is if they decided it would be more fair, when they had the snowboarding half-pipe challenges, and to cut the ramp down to like 3 feet so Shaun White wouldn't be so dominant anymore. So Shaun White may still have a good chance of being good or even being the best, but at the same time, the ability for everybody else to compete with him just skyrocketed and went through the roof. And that's essentially what's going on in games today. But back to the main point, like I said, games are being geared towards more casual friendly audience, and as a result of that, the market has opened up huge. So because the market has opened up so much bigger, I think companies are starting to see that it doesn't necessarily matter quite so much how great of a title they're making, that regardless of the energy they put into it, they are able to sell a game based on nothing more than essentially, hot air, hype, PR, marketing, whatever. I think this is, and nowhere is this more clear than essentially the case of Battlefield 3. If you can put out a beta like that and have people defending it and sending me messages telling me that I'm a moron for, not realizing this is an early game client and that the game that they're going to be releasing is newer and more worked on than that, Like they have won and I have lost. I think there's a few reasons for actually wanting to do something like this. Number one, they're always going to be right on a technical perspective. Every time a company puts out a game demo, it's always going to be an earlier build than the one that they're actually working on. The second that demo leaves their environment, it's older than the one they're working on. How old that is, whatever, is up to the individual game company. Supposedly, Battlefield 3 was anywhere from 1 to 3 months old, and Skyrim supposedly is using an earlier build. Supposedly they're letting people play a pre-alpha game, which pre-alpha, according to Wikipedia, is like, well, it's really fucking new. I mean, it's just fucking, not even meat and bones. It's just bones. It's barely even bones. It's not even a skeleton of a video game. So I don't really know how they're choosing to classify these terms, or how early they're choosing to go back in a build, or why they're choosing that version of a build. But like I said, from a technical standpoint, anytime they're releasing those builds, or those demos, or those betas, or alphas, or whatever, they're always going to be earlier. And I think, like I said, what they've realized as a result of marketing towards a more casual audience is that, like I said, it doesn't matter the quality of their product. Essentially what they're thinking is that's a win-win situation for them. If somebody like myself plays Battlefield 3 and is like, oh, this game, it's not fun, look at all the bugs, glitches, horrendous netcode, spike damage, really powerful sniper rifles. Servers didn't work originally when Caspian came out, and never ended up playing it because every time I logged in they weren't working. It's too much lag on them. If you don't like that, then fine, we're going to fix this game and it'll be great when retail comes out. And if you do like it, if you do like playing that, hot fucking mess that was the Battlefield 3 beta, then fantastic, the game will be even better and you'll like it even that much more. I mean, I think they're seeing it as a win-win situation. And I think that part of that problem, like I said, is just a lack of an informed and educated populace on where gaming is at today. I had somebody link me another video of a couple guys talking about like the Battlefield 3, demo beta, whatever, and how they were canceling their pre-orders. But it was interesting because their perspectives were so different than my own, because they hadn't ever played any of their Battlefield games, and essentially their only gaming experience is coming from the COD series, and they don't necessarily understand and see that gaming has made a specific move toward a casual and more acceptable, I'm trying to think this, I'm going to say noob-friendly audience, but like I said, a very, very specific move to, like I said, lower those skill ceilings. And I think that they're almost preying on the fact that you guys don't have the knowledge or the experience that some people might have if they've been around for a while. Because I think what's going on right now is if you're still buying Battlefield 3 after playing that beta, that you're hoping, like I said, that you're basically putting your faith in EA, that you've been sold on the idea or of the game having potential versus actually playing that game and being happy and excited that it was an amazing franchise. As far as will that game be patched and fixed or not, my own experience playing Battlefield 1942, game was published by EA, created by DICE, same as any other Battlefield game. The reason why I would argue we're probably still not playing Battlefield 1942 today is because that game was patched into oblivion. Battlefield died not because people got tired of playing Battlefield, but because people could not play Battlefield anymore because of the way that it had been patched. The first thing they did, which was arguably the biggest reason people are not playing Battlefield anymore, is they patched it, and it was called the Punkbuster patch. I think I might even still remember 121 or something like that. I don't know, it doesn't matter. They brought Punkbuster into the game, and what Punkbuster did is it made it impossible to hit anybody running perpendicular to you. Well, kind of an issue. Essentially, it had to be running in a straight line away from you, and even then it was still tough to kill each other. I remember it was funny, the patch came out, and I think I randomly bumped into XCal actually into a server, and it was hilarious because he was on one side of his sandbags and I was on the other, and we were doing our little strafing thing, firing off at each other. Nobody hit each other, and then we pulled out our pistols and emptied those into the air, and I ran back around behind a wall to find some cover and reload. I was like, what the fuck just happened? I was like, I've never sprayed an entire clip of a gun and not killed somebody. I was like, what the fuck just happened? And that was essentially the beginning of the end. None of the issues that the game needed worked on were ever fixed. Essentially, how far you could throw landmines, the amount of bombs that planes had, all sorts of things like that. Not to get into specific details about Battlefield because it doesn't matter anymore. But like I said, the issues that needed to be patched were not, and issues that weren't patched didn't need any fixing were brought in and absolutely just destroyed and demolished. The game was eventually broken down to a science as a result of saying it was going to be made available for competitive play as far as CPL goes. It used to be Cal was the amateur online league, and CPL was the professional meet down to Texas to play in person and win lots of money and prizes league. It was broken down to a science, and it was obvious what the game's problems were, and it was obvious they weren't going to be patched, and the community did try to rally and fix it, but it just was too little too late. So this is essentially this is the history of the company right now that is trying to sell you a game on faith and on the potential that it could have. Knowing what I know about how Battlefield itself played out and the history of the Battlefield gaming, seeing the games move from Battlefield 1942, where players that were exceptionally skilled didn't just do a little better or even a lot better than players that were, anywhere from okay to good, but players like myself or XCal or a few other guys did. It was light years apart, and that's why gaming has moved the way that it has today. Is they do not want a model like that encourages players that have exceptional skill levels at games to just run around and poop and shit in everybody's mouths all day, because the players did not like that. They didn't feel like there was anything they could do, and indeed they probably couldn't. I'm not going to go out there tomorrow and expect to compete with Michael Jordan on the basketball court or Shaun White in a half pipe, but in gaming people expect to be able to do that, and that's what they've been given. So what we started to see was a history of the Battlefield series progressing more and more towards a casual audience. Battlefield Vietnam came out, had weapons that fired much faster, were stronger, had things like helicopters that were fairly dominant if you were extremely good at them, admittedly. But KD ratio started to go down in Battlefield Vietnam. No longer was I running, an 8 to 10 KD ratio every game. It started to go down to a 5 or 6 or something like that. And as time went on, essentially the quality bar, both the quality bar was lowered, but so was the idea of what the game Battlefield was about. Like I said, you progress to where you are today, and then you enter, Bad Company 2. And it's funny because a lot of people say they don't like Battlefield 3 are defending Bad Company 2. And Bad Company 2 has many of the similar issues that Battlefield 3 does, admittedly not the bugs and glitches, but in my opinion, like the netcode or the lag or the issues surrounding hitting people are almost identical in Bad Company 2 as it is to Battlefield 3. I think Bad Company 2 has a whole host of other issues, not going to cover those right now, but in my opinion, it doesn't matter what the other issues are. If you can't reliably shoot somebody and reliably feel like you're being hit and know what to do, if you can't take cover, if you can't react to being hit, and if I can't guarantee that 9 times out of 10, when I shoot somebody, he's going to go down, given this is how many rounds I put into him, what's it matter? I can still do that even in COD Black Ops, which is poorly optimized for PC. I can, even as fast and as nasty as those weapons are, all of them kill so brutally fast. Running a ping, even around 100, I can still react to being shot, assuming I'm not completely retarded and run out and just get sprayed. But I can more accurately gauge, when somebody's going to go down, and occasionally it doesn't work. And there are still a few problems here and there, but they are the exception to the rule as opposed to the rule itself, which is what seemed to me was the case in Battlefield 3. Anyway, I didn't really want this to be all about Battlefield 3 or Skyrim or anything like that. Kind of ended up going that way, but like I said, the big issue, what I want to talk about here, was the marketing. They are using an earlier game, perhaps purposely, but what they are purposefully doing is trying to justify their horrendous beta experience by saying it's an earlier game, and it's not justification. Like I said, now you know the history of the way the games have gone, a rough idea. More happy to talk about that more in detail. If you have any questions, let me know. But you have an idea of where games have gone. They've been patched into oblivion. It hasn't worked out. They're trying to sell you this game based on essentially faith and the potential that it has. And I think that you should be making your purchasing decisions, whether you choose or choose not to buy it, based on what you've actually played and what you've experienced, as opposed to what you've been promised. So as usual, any comments, criticisms, critiques, let me know.